Film workers have been going on strike lately. Let's talk about that. If you're watching this video, it's for one of three reasons. Reason 1, you just like my content. Aw, thanks! Reason 2, you are a person on the outskirts of the industry who is just curious to see what the details are. Like, this is a podcaster or an influencer who wants to know either why people are striking or what they can still do during the strike. This is personally where I fall and why I started making this video to begin with. Reason number 3 is that you're completely separate from the industry, but you just want to know either what the details are or what you can do to help. I can answer all of those questions right now. Let's do this. To start with, I know that my viewer drop-off rate is pretty high, so I'm going to start with the most important stuff. 1. If you want to help support the strike, here's what you do. If you have some sort of a following like mine, then your most important job is to make some post or something in solidarity with the strike, directing people towards important information about this. That's sort of what this video is. Failing that, donate some of your extra cash to the strike fund. I'll have it linked below. And secondly, do not, under any circumstances, try to get writers and actors back to work during the strike, or try to go on social media to find out when the strike is going to end. The strike is going to last until the creators manage to negotiate for a fairer deal. The point of this video is for you to be more informed about what's going on, not to give you a platform to complain about your shows going on hiatus while the people in charge try to negotiate for better working rights. Are we clear? Good. I'll have my sources linked in the description. Let's get a move on. Important terminology. For the purposes of making this video as approachable as possible, I have a bunch of things that you might not necessarily know the meanings of that I have the definitions of listed right here. If you think there's anything that I left out, let me know in the comments, I'll explain it, but otherwise, let's go. Union. A labor union is a group of workers who band together to obtain better working conditions. Together, they can negotiate for higher wages, mandatory breaks, healthcare and pensions, etc. When necessary, they can even go on strike. Strike. When a union decides to collectively cease working until their demands are properly negotiated. WGA, Writers Guild of America. This is the labor union for writers. SAG-AFTRA, Screen Actors Guild / American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. This is the labor union for actors. AMPTP, Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. Or as I'll be calling them, Big Hollywood. This is the company that all the big studios work with instead of negotiating individually with the creators. Minimum. This is the absolute lowest a union member can be paid for a single project. There are various scales to them based around what type of media the project is. Check my source for more details if you're interested. MBA. Minimum Basic Agreement. The deal, updated every 3 years, that outlines exactly what the minimums are for every type of project. Picket line. The metaphorical line in the sand drawn between what is and is not okay to do during the strike. In addition to this, workers will often be literally standing outside the offices of their place of employment in an effort to prevent non-striking workers from going in there. Scam. Someone who crosses the picket line. Now, finally, back to the actual video, starting with the WGA. WGA. Background. For months prior, WGA had been trying to negotiate with Big Hollywood over the topics I'll go into in a later section. Big Hollywood refused to listen. In April of 2023, WGA officially voted to strike if their negotiations had not been met by May 1st. They hadn't. And so, the evening of May 1st, the Writers Guild of America unanimously voted to strike. At a minute past midnight the morning of May 2nd, the strike began. Over 100 days ago, people took to picketing on the streets. As of writing this, and almost certainly as of you seeing this, they haven't stopped. Now that it's clear no one's backing down, Big Hollywood made an official statement. The end game is to allow things to drag on until union members start losing their apartments and losing their homes. Mwahahaha. As if they didn't already seem like supervillains enough. Why strike? There are many reasons writers are striking. The short is this. Writers need to be paid streaming residuals, Hollywood is trying to replace them with AI, Hollywood is trying to get rid of the writer's room, and Hollywood is trying to make this a gig economy with zero job security. Here is the much longer version. Residuals. WGA demands that all writers have an increase in minimums by at least 6%, 5%, 5%. The most Hollywood will give them is 432. Streaming features. WGA says that anything intended as HBS VOD with a budget of over $12 million need to be compensated the same as if it were intended for theaters. Hollywood says that if it's over 96 minutes long and has a budget of at least $40 million, they would be willing to pay 9% more than the minimum with no increase to residuals. Streaming minimums. This one's a little complicated, but I think I can explain it alright. Big Hollywood wants to make writing a gig economy thing by removing any guarantee of working for a decent length of time. This is based around a pre-existing deal they had, so I invite you to look into it more for yourself if you're interested. The writer's room. WGA demands that pre-greenlit shows have at least 6 writers, and post-greenlit shows have at least 1 writer per episode up to 6, then 1 for every 2 episodes. That is a lot of words thrown around, and I don't know if they made a whole ton of sense, so here's an example. There's this new Marvel show being planned. Let's call it The Fantastic Family. Now, because the show hasn't been officially greenlit, it currently needs to have at least 6 writers. Larry, Curly, Moe, Kevin, Abbott, and Costello. But once it's greenlit, they realize that because it's based around the 4 members of the team, it should be 4 episodes. So Abbott and Costello are let go from the project. 4 writers, 4 episodes. Problem is they keep writing, one thing becomes very clear to Kevin. They need introduction and conclusion episodes, bringing the total up to 6. Because of that, Abbott and Costello are brought back in. But as Larry works on his episode about Reed, he realizes that the guy is just too interesting to only have 1 solo episode, and they need to add a 7th episode. Currently, they don't need another writer. But then, Curly figures out the same for his episode about The Thing, meaning they're required to bring in a 7th writer for their 8-episode series. This isn't quite accurate. Writing is a much more collaborative process than I was describing, but that's the simplest possible way for me to attempt to explain it. All that being said, Hollywood refused with no counter. Weeklies. Everyone working on a weekly show is to be given a 655 raise with a new tier that has 25% higher pay than everyone else. Well, Big Hollywood will allow it, but the most they'll settle for is... Wait, did I read that right? I think Hollywood is illiterate. They saw 25% increase and said 2 to 7% increase. That is not the same. That's really not. Pension and healthcare. WGA asks for every member of a team to be given bonuses as if they were working individually. Hollywood refuses no counter. And lastly, AI. WGA says to harshly regulate AI use on NBA. Hollywood says no. Don't allow AI to write or rewrite material. Hollywood says no. NBA material can't be used to train AI. Hollywood says no. The only stuff Hollywood allows is annual meetings to discuss advancements in technology. Bullshit. What they're allowing is bullshit. What crosses the line? The central rule is stated right at the top of the page. You may not meet or negotiate with a struck company, and you may not provide writing services, sell or option literary material to a struck company. It's mentioned in the FAQ, but I won't go over that, so here's their definition of a struck company. Basically, struck companies are any company that signed the 2020 NBA. While the strike does not explicitly forbid working with companies that didn't sign that, the guild rules do. So in other words, any company that they would be allowed to work with, they are no longer allowed to work with, and any company they couldn't work with, they still can't work with. Most of the rules are complicated and written in legalese, but there are a few that aren't, and I won't really cover those. Here's the simple version of all the rules that don't make sense. Rule 2. If a writer had already written something for a studio, they are forbidden from sending it over. Rule 3. Writers are not allowed to negotiate with studios and must inform their agents. The same applies to them. Rule 4. Writers have to make sure companies don't have access to in-development or speculative scripts. Rules 5 and 6. Writers aren't allowed to negotiate for or discuss future projects. Rule 7. Writers aren't allowed to enter writers' rooms, either in person or virtually. Rule 8. Writers must ensure they have a digital copy, with a date attached, of anything they've written to prove they haven't been scabbing. Rule 9. If writers suspect someone else of scabbing, they must report that person. Rule 10. If the guild tells writers to go outside and stand on the picket line, they must do so. Rule 12. Anyone employed as a writer and something else, such as an actor or producer, can still do their other job, assuming their other guild isn't also striking, but they're not allowed to change even a single line. Change a line to flow better? Banned. Cutting something for time? Banned. Adding a scene to fill a gap? Banned. Just about anything that involves adding or removing words or plot elements is banned. Rule 13. While the guild has no authority over non-union writers, if someone is found to have been scabbing during the strike, they have total permission to ban that person from entering the guild in the future. If you want to read the FAQ for yourself, feel free, but I'm not going to go over it because all of it pertains exclusively to people in the industry, and that's probably not you if you're watching this video. So instead, let's move over to SAG-AFTRA. Background. This one doesn't really need any background. SAG-AFTRA was negotiating, negotiations kind of fell through, strike happened. Let's get to the juicy part. Why strike? Minimums. Actors need an 11.44 raise to account for inflation. The most Hollywood will give them is 543.5, even though this means that in 2026, they'll still be working for less than they were in 2020. AI. Actors demand fair compensation for anything using an AI replica of them. Hollywood says that background actors can go in, get half a day's pay, then hand over the rights to having their image used in place of any and all circumstances with no compensation or knowledge. Hey, Hollywood, Dr. Doom called. He wants his evil plans back. Hair and makeup. All actors need specialized hair and makeup designs at the cost of the studios to design safe and efficient costumes. Hollywood is willing to give that to the leads, but background performers are on their own. Streaming. Actors need proper streaming revenue. Hollywood denies no counter. Bonuses. Actors need pensions and health plans since those haven't gone up in 40 years. Hollywood gives them a tiny increase that comes nowhere close to actually adjusting for inflation. Plus, child actors still straight up just don't get anything. Hiatus work. Actors on long-running shows need to be allowed to do other work while the shows are on break. Hollywood gave a small number of performers the ability to work between seasons, but only for shows created in 2025 and beyond. Out-of-state/country work. Actors need proper compensation when they travel abroad for a performance. Hollywood is willing to give a tiny bit of money that comes nowhere close to actually covering anything. If this felt less in depth, that's because my source was. For WGA, the only thing related to why they strike is this long, complicated chart written mostly in legalese. But the plus side of that is that it gives me lots of hard data. SAG-AFTRA does not give me hard data. They mostly just say, we asked for a thing, Hollywood didn't give it to us. Which, while true, doesn't actually give me the hard info I'm really looking for, and I'm not sure where to find it. I can post an update in the description or pinned comment if anyone does know where to find that, but I can't find it. On the other hand, SAG-AFTRA also had this quick, easy-to-read thing at the start that outlined what their primary concerns were, so I basically just described that because, unlike WGA, who didn't tell me what any of their primary reasons were, I knew what the main reasons for striking were. Back on track. What crosses the line? Though a lot of it's written in legalese, it's not that hard to figure out what the strike rules for actors are, because there's like 5 of them. Actors cannot perform in any of the roles currently cited along the screen. Actors cannot do anything to promote strike work, such as going to fan events or posting on social media. Actors cannot negotiate with studios, nor can the agents do so for them. Lastly, one important thing to remember is this. Anyone not in the union who breaks strike rules is subject to be denied entry into the union should they request it in the future. Now we've covered the reasons and the rules for striking, so now we're done with SAG-AFTRA, right? Oh, you sweet innocent summer child, no. While the rules for actors were quite simple, the rules for people not even in the film industry are quite intense. Let's go to the SAG-AFTRA frequently asked questions. FAQs.
Hey, Editor Pitch here. I realized while working on this that for this past section, as well as much of the later sections, I sounded very annoyed with the guilds. That's because I think their documentation needs work and some of the rules are unreasonably harsh. I 100% support both strikes, I just wish a couple small things had been handled better. Back to the video.
Alright, I know I made that seem pretty harsh, but it's actually not that serious. There are only really 2 categories that apply to non-industry professionals, so I am just going to cover those. Influencers. We can still take brand deals provided they fit the SAG-AFTRA influencer agreement, but we cannot take any deals to promote struck companies unless we were already under contract to do so. We are not allowed to make any posts promoting struck work, even if we're not being paid. As far as I can tell, promoting just means discussing, so in other words, I can't make 90% of my regular content. This'll be fun! We are allowed to attend fan events such as Comic-Con, if, and only if, we are doing so with zero connection to struck work. For instance, I could go to Comic-Con and hold a fan meet and greet, but the second I put in a picture of Beetlejuice, that would no longer be allowed. And God help anyone trying to actually host a panel. Podcasters. Podcasters can keep working, people can keep showing up on podcasts, but some serious conditions do apply. Any podcast not explicitly under contract is not allowed to discuss or promote struck work, including past work. It's kinda unclear to me how long this lasts for, but basically just all of it. It seems to be all of it, even stuff from like the 50s. The rules for podcasters are so strict because, well, read the quote on screen and see if this makes any sense to you. No boycotts have been called yet, so I don't see how people promoting struck work to fans who have no say over what happens in the industry impacts a fair deal. But whatever. The ruling for struck work basically consists of anything that's been made by union members. I think this means that non-union work, such as media that's now in the public domain, or was made by non-union actors, is fair game, but take that with a side of salt, because I'm not really sure. That being said, how will this impact my content? Short answer, I'm not really sure, but expect a lot more stuff about video games. The longer answer is that while I don't really know, I will attempt to steer my content away from making stuff about struck work. I have 2 videos planned at this point that I'm too late in production to alter. One of them I'm hoping will come out next week to coincide with something else, and the other one, I already have 3 other people on board, I can't just tell those people to cancel. But otherwise, I'm gonna mostly be switching to comics and video games. I have a video planned about Deltarune, I have another idea related to these strikes, and I have several gaming ideas as well. But I'm not really who this video is about, so let's wrap up with what can you do to help? I mentioned this before, but just to reiterate, there are 2 main ways to support the strike. The first is if you have any following at all, make posts, or in my case videos, showing your solidarity to the actors and writers. And second, whether or not you have any following at all, donate to the strike fund. I'll have it linked in the description right above my sources. But also, I strongly encourage you to try and learn more about the strikes for yourself. My sources are of course a great starting point, but for writers specifically, Adam Conover's channel is another good jumping off point. That's actually how I learned a lot of what I listed in the description as common knowledge. This video was intended as an overview so you can get the basics, but this is far from all there is to know. Also, make fun of Stephen Amell.
I support my union, I do, and I stand with them. I do not support striking. I don't.
Man, if only there was some famous, recognizable quote of his that we could use in this moment to talk about the fact that...
Stephen Amell,
You have failed this city.
But that being said, thanks for watching. Make sure to click the subscribe button. Oh god, that felt so gross. Cut that. Stay ultra, and peace out.